You will hear a conversation between two students talking about driving lessons. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi, Zach. I heard you passed your driving test. Congratulations.
Thanks, Olivia. I passed just last week. It feels great to be independent and driving on my own.
I really want to take driving lessons, but I haven't been able to find a driving school that will give lessons during the weekends, so that I don't have to miss any classes at college.
The driving school that I used was brilliant and really flexible with their teaching hours. It's really close to the school. The address is 67 Kings Road. That's 67 King''S Road.
Oh, that's perfect. I don't like the idea of driving around busy streets. Did your teacher make you drive in urban areas, or did he mainly teach you on roads in the countryside?
My teacher said that I had to learn on both in order to become a good and experienced driver. We would start in the city centre and then drive north above the city.
He sounds like a good teacher. Would you mind giving me his contact details so I can ask him for lessons?
Of course. My mother's friend Daniel Smith referred me to him. His name is Alan Sutcliffe.
Could you spell the surname, please?
Sutcliffe.
Thanks for helping me out. I'll give him a call tomorrow. I don't know if I should learn in a manual or automatic car. How do I decide?
I wasn't sure which type of car to learn in either. In the end, I chose to learn in a manual car, because once you've learnt how to drive manually, you can drive automatic as well. Most cars on the road are automatic nowadays.
OK, I think I'll learn with the manual car too then. Hopefully the teacher will be able to give me lessons in the evenings after school.
It would be much better if you take the lessons during the day. It will be far easier for you to learn when there is enough daylight to clearly see everything going on around you. But you need to be an experienced driver to drive safely at night.
How frustrating. I was hoping I wouldn't have to take lessons during the weekends. You're right, though. Safety comes first.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Speaking of safety, you should wait until summer to start learning. It's really difficult and dangerous to drive in the wind and rain as a learner, so you should definitely wait until the weather is sunny and dry.
OK, that's perfect actually. It will give me some time to save up some money to pay for the lessons.
Tell me about it. I had to work for months before I had enough money saved up. It was worth all the work when I finally got my driving licence, though.
The whole process is so expensive. How much did it cost you in the end?
Well, each half-hour lesson cost $30, and then the final test cost $50. In total, it cost me about $300.
Gosh, it's pretty expensive. How did you find the test? Was it really difficult?
No, it wasn't too bad, and the man was really calm and friendly. I knew that I would have to perform 2 parking manoeuvres during the test, so I practiced them a lot beforehand, and that really helped. The test used to last 40 minutes, but it changed a bit. For the first 20 minutes of the test, he gave me directions, and I had to just drive around, and then the last 10 minutes was for demonstrating the manoeuvres. So the test is 30 minutes in total.
Okay, great. I'll remember that. Do you have any more advice?
It's really good to practice driving a lot outside of driving lessons as well. Whenever my parents were running errands on the weekends, I would offer to drive them. My driving teacher also told me to buy a notebook to write down everything that I've learnt in it, like a diary.
Haha, that sounds boring, but I'll do it if it helps.
I found it really useful. Before my test, I read through everything I had written down, and it reminded me of a lot of things that I had forgotten about. It's really helpful for the theory test as well, because there's so much information to remember for it.
That's great, Zach. Thanks for your help.
No problem. See you at school.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear part of a talk about Mount Rushmore given by a tour guide. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mount Rushmore. To start your visit, I'm just going to give you a brief account of the history of the memorial before letting you roam about on your own. I won't keep you long, okay? Mount Rushmore is South Dakota's top tourist attraction and features the heads of 4 United States presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Each head is 18 meters tall, which is taller than the heights of 11 people combined. The sculptor initially wanted to depict the presidents from head to waist, but due to a lack of funding, the construction had to stop before this vision could be realized. In total, it cost the government $1 million to sculpt the heads at Mount Rushmore. Before the construction of the presidents' heads, the mountain was just bare rock and forest, attracting only a few hikers a year. The new carving at Mount Rushmore has become an iconic symbol of presidential greatness and has appeared in works of fiction and other popular works. The sculpture has also worked perfectly as a way to develop tourism, which was its intended purpose, and now attracts over 2 million people a year. The original plan was to carve the presidents' faces into the granite pillars known as the Needles. However, the sculptor soon realized that these rocks were too eroded and delicate to support such a large sculpture. Instead, he chose to locate the carving at Mount Rushmore due to its grand appearance and brightly lit rock faces that experience maximum exposure to sunlight throughout the day as a result of the southeast orientation. Upon seeing Mount Rushmore, the sculptor declared, "America will march along that skyline." The name of Mount Rushmore also has an interesting history. The location was originally known as the Six Grandfathers. However, during an expedition in 1885, the mountain was renamed after Charles E. Rushmore, a prominent New York lawyer who joked that his annual treks to the mountain had earned him the right to have it named after him. 40 years after the mountain was renamed, Charles E. Rushmore donated $5,000 towards the sculpting of the president's heads, the largest single contribution. In 1927, the construction works started and 7 years later was complete with no fatalities. So that's the history for you. If you'd like any more information, please feel free to ask me questions, or you can soak up the information from our fantastic guidebook.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now I'm going to give you a plan of the site, and I'd just like to point out where everything is so that you can explore everything for yourself. We're currently standing at the entrance, which is marked with the arrow on the map. If you follow the trail up to our left, you will find the information centre. There's a great photo booth there where you can have your photograph taken with Mount Rushmore in the background for a fee of only $10. What a great souvenir! In front of us is the refreshment centre, where you can help yourselves to coffee, locally grown tea, and a delicious selection of cold drinks and biscuits. Be sure to stay hydrated as it can get really hot up here. To our right, not far up the trail, is the gift shop. Here we sell copies of the guidebook, and it's also the perfect place to pick up some small souvenirs for yourself, your family and friends. Now, further up the trail, behind the gift shop, is a big stone building with a workshop. This is where all of our souvenirs are made by hand, which you can purchase in the gift shop, like I said before. Some are even carved from pieces of rock taken from Mount Rushmore itself. If you carry on walking up the trail past the workshop, you'll find our state-of-the-art visitor centre, where you can find maps of the walking trails here at Mount Rushmore. Now for the real treat. After you have walked past the visitor centre, you can follow the trail up to the left, which will take you to our wooden shelter. From here you will have the best view of Mount Rushmore that there is, an experience not be forgotten. Right, if anyone wants a guided tour, then I'm starting at the information centre. If you'd like to follow me, this way please.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 30. Welcome back to the new term, Martin and Amanda. I hope you've had a good break and that you're looking forward to writing your dissertations. In this tutorial, I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask questions on writing the dissertation, such as requirements, dates, and who to see when you need help. I know that it's all available on the department website, but sometimes students just like to check or confirm information, or sometimes they need a little more detail. So, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Is there a fixed hand-in date yet? On the website it said that one hadn't been decided on yet.
I'm glad you asked that question. I just heard this morning that the deadline has been decided and it is the 28th of May. That's a week later than we had originally planned.
What about the word limit? The website gave a very broad range. What was it, Martin? 10,000 to 20,000 words?
I believe so, Amanda.
Well, I believe that was a typing error. It should be 10 to 12,000 words, but feel free to write a little more if you need to. However, make sure that your dissertation is at least 10,000 words long, not including the contents, references, and bibliography.
Right, thank you. And we can choose any topics we like, can't we?
Any from year 3. And do remember to get your topic approved by your personal tutor. Oh, that's me, isn't it? Before you start writing, I'd hate to have to tell you your topic was unacceptable after you'd spent a lot of time on it.
What would you like us to show you initially, apart from the title?
Well, I'd like to see a basic bibliography first, along with an outline of your dissertation. You should get that done by the end of January. This month, in other words.
According to the website, the research should take 8 to 10 weeks. So that takes us from, well, until mid-April, basically.
Yes, you should have the research pretty much done by the time you return from the Easter break.
It seems like a reasonable amount of time, but I bet it disappears fast.
It certainly does. You'll probably find that you need to do some extra research during the second half of April. Ideally, you'd be writing then, but very few students get all the information they need, and the personal tutors almost always need to make some further suggestions. That's why it's really important to get the bulk of your research done by mid-April.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions.
I see. If we get into trouble, or can see that we're going to get into trouble with our research, we should obviously contact you ASAP.
Absolutely.
Do you think that we should look at what other students have done in the past, in order to get a better idea of what to do and what to write?
It can be helpful, but what often happens is that students rely too much on what they read. So I would only use other previous students' work as a reference.
Got it.
I know that we have the research guide to help us, but are there any other books or sources that you would recommend? I mean, to help us with planning a dissertation and the organisation and so on.
Yes, I wanted to ask you that too.
There are several available from the library. I wouldn't bother buying any. My personal favourite is Dissertations and You by Roger Klein. Another good one is Mastering Your Dissertation by Helen Blondell. There's a book about research techniques. What's it called? It's something simple like Research Techniques for Dissertations. The author is Helen Trailforth. Oh, I know. It's called Dissertation Research Techniques. Very good book. There's more than one copy of each of those in the library. One is for reference only, and you know about the recall system if a book is being borrowed by someone else and you want it, don't you?
Yes.
Good, very good. Anything else?
Well, now that you've mentioned research techniques, I've got a question. Questionnaires. A good idea, Professor.
The general consensus is that they're not very helpful, though some prominent researchers beg to differ. Clear them with me first if you decide to go ahead and use them. You see, you need to be very careful about the questions that you ask and order of the questions. Questionnaires very often lead people towards giving certain answers rather than getting at their true feelings and opinions.
Martin, anything else?
No, I'm happy. Thank you, Professor.
Yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a monologue. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Have you ever wondered where your recyclables end up after they get picked up from the curb? After you've left them at a recycling drop-off centre, or when your hauler has come to empty your recycling dumpster? Well, this presentation will tell you. The story begins when a resident places their materials out for recycling in a special bin, brings their recyclables to one of the recycling drop-off centres, or when a business puts their used materials in their recycling dumpster. It is very important that residents and employees properly prepare their recyclables for collection. Improper preparation of materials, for example not removing container lids or including the wrong type of material, causes contamination. Although some contamination is to be expected and is removed during the sorting process at the processing facility, processors may not accept materials that are heavily contaminated, and these will be disposed of. After materials are put out for recycling, the recycling truck comes to pick them up. Recyclables brought to the drop-off centres should be placed in the appropriate bins. The large containers are emptied periodically or whenever they are full. Businesses and multi-family residences collect on the days decided by the property manager. The trucks that collect recyclables from the curb and drop-off centres then drive the materials to a material recovery facility, or MRF. When the trucks arrive at the MRF, they are first weighed at the station to determine the weight of materials delivered to the facility. Next, the trucks proceed to the tipping floor, where they dump their materials. Items are dumped in specific areas to facilitate the sorting process. After the different materials are dumped on the tipping floor at the MRF, they are fed onto different conveyor belts according to the type of material. The materials then proceed up the different conveyor belts and are subject to both manual and automatic sorting. Individuals manually remove any large objects such as a lawn chair or garbage can, along with any contaminants. After the initial manual sort, the materials pass by a magnet that captures the metal cans. and then through an air sorter to separate the remaining materials. Once the materials are sorted, they are compressed into bales that are shipped to processors, who will then use these materials to create new products. Plastics can be recycled into items such as clothing, lumber, park benches and playground equipment. Metal and glass containers are often recycled into new containers, and paper is recycled into new paper products, such as copy paper, toilet paper, napkins and newspaper. Remember to close the recycling loop. Buy recycled both at home and at work, as this is the only way that recycling truly succeeds. Find out more about buying recycled products. Remember, if you're not buying recycled, you're not really recycling. So, how are we doing? Let's take a brief look at our recycling rate information. All municipalities are required to maintain a minimum recycling rate of 25% of the total municipal solid waste generated annually. We are required to annually report on recycling activities and file a report with the Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ. These reports are due to the DEQ on April 30th of each year for the preceding calendar year. Based on information received to date, last year we reported a recycling rate of 33.9%, 2.8% higher than the previous year. Paper recycling was up 36%, as was the recycling of bottles and cans. Our target is a recycling rate of over 50% by 2014.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.